Greetings, my name is Father Sebastiaan, Master Fangsmith of the Sabretooth clan, Impresario of the Endless Night Vampire Ball, and author of the books Black Veils and Strig of Eye. Today, I wish you welcome to my Vampire Adventures podcast with a very special guest, the proprietor of the New Orleans Vampire Cafe, Potions, and Boutique de Vampire, a good friend and a wonderful supporter who's been in the Endless Night story for many years, Marita.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
We should tell all the audience about all the bloopers that I just made for
Well, the
them.
only reason you made any bloopers is because of me, because I messed the whole thing up. So it was my
Oh,
fault.
but we made it. We're here. We did
We're
it.
here.
We
Yes. Thank you
we
for having
sounded
me.
great.
Yes.
So, was that introduction satisfactory?
Very nice. Yes. Thank you very much.
So, how you been? It's been a couple months since I've seen you last.
Been very busy. I've been writing a lot, working on another. The novel comes out next year. I have Penny Dreadful coming out. I'm doing book signings everywhere, and I'm opening a few new businesses. And so, yeah, I've been really busy.
Well, you were definitely the de facto lead vampire of New Orleans. All right, with all of your entrepreneurial activities, and we're gonna get into some of that stuff in this interview and let people know the offerings and the contributions that you've made to the vampire world in New Orleans. And you've done a lot. So let's start with, like, how did you come to New Orleans?
So I really I like the idea of New Orleans, but actually the Witching Hour, the book The Witching Hour, got me interested in New Orleans. And so I was president of marketing for Home Savings of America, and they sent me here to see if it was a viable location for us to participate in a conference. And
Okay.
I literally stepped foot into the French Quarter, and I couldn't believe it existed. And so I, obviously investigated more, and I kept coming back, and I was so sad every time I left. So I finally got a little tiny apartment on my last day here on one of my trips, and I thought I wouldn't feel so sad every time I left. And then once I moved here Halloween weekend to help promote our vampire wine at the Endless Night Vampire Ball, I I just sold my house over the phone. I just called my realtor and I said, I'm staying here. Yep. So that was my first weekend in my actual apartment in New Orleans. And actually, after I got the apartment is when I thought about how can I be here. And I remember drinking vampire wine. And so I did a marketing plan on the plane going back to California. And then I worked with Michael at Vampire Vineyards, and we still work together today. So yeah, it's a big, happy family. So that's how I got here.
You know what's funny is Michael's office is about 6 blocks down the street from me.
Oh, that's so cool. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
so we get to see each other occasionally
I'm
in our
glad.
vampire adventures. And the vampire cosmetics people, Rachel and her team, are working with Michael a lot, and I'm really excited to see him again.
Yeah.
So
Also, we have vampire gummy bears now.
what?
Yeah, they're chocolate covered gummy bears. Which at first, when I heard that, it sounded like the craziest, not attractive, tasteful thing. But when I tasted them, he said, "Wait till you taste them. They're amazing," and they are amazing because our vampire chocolate is really good. But they're delicious, really delicious. So vampire gummy bears.
I'm going to call him up and go down to his office and try them.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
That's great. So you worked for Vampire Wine. You came to Endless Night as a rep. And then you just kind of spread out through the French Quarter, and now you own like a dozen businesses.
Well, then I started actually a music business, and that's a whole nother Oprah. But meanwhile, I thought, there isn't a real big vampire presence here. They had vampire tours, and the Endless Night event, but that was pretty much it. And and Rest Ball. Excuse me. So I thought I'd want to open up a little vampire boutique. And so I opened Boutique de Vampire 20 years ago on New Year's Eve. And it's been amazing. I mean, really amazing. We have now over 130 artists that make things just for us, and really cool things like creepy dolls, beautiful jewelry, little Venus flytraps. I mean, I can, it's amazing how many things we have in our shop in that little tiny space. And we have a nice website, feelthebite.com. But I'm so proud of our artists, and I'm so proud of our staff. We have now a huge staff. I started with myself and my husband, and now we have like 10 people that work at the shop. And most of them, I mean, all of them make things for us. And
Okay.
they make things while they're at the shop, the products that I've created that they continue to make. And then also things that they make that I purchase from them and then we sell at the shop. So it's a really, really neat experience, I think, for the artists that, work with us.
So what when you came up with the Boutique de Vampire concept, because I know you've been in several locations, and
Five locations. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I counted three off the top of my head,
Wait,
but
and let me just tell you something really crazy about this. One of my favorite times ever is we were on Toulouse and we were moving to Pirate Alley. No, I'm sorry. We were on Toulouse. We were moving to no, we were on Orleans. We were moving to Toulouse, and I opened the shop in the morning. We closed at noon. I had two friends with trucks. My husband and our other friends put our displays on the trucks, and my other friends and I were at the new shop setting up the displays as they came off. And we opened at about 5 o'clock that night. And I thought, what a cool experience if you were a tourist and you happened into our shop that morning before noon, and then you walked around. Wouldn't that be the coolest thing ever? It didn't happen, but that would have been really neat.
oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah. So 5 locations. The one we have now is um, the best. I mean, it's just been
Okay.
amazing. I love Pirates Alley, and I also love the one on Orleans. The when we moved to Toulouse, it was really the way it aesthetically, it was the nicest shop. It was bigger. It had a courtyard in the back with a fountain. It was really lovely. The one we have now is the smallest shop we've ever had, and I cannot believe how much business we get from that little tiny shop. No
Oh,
picture window. All my other shops have had beautiful picture windows. There's nothing. There's a door that's filled with stickers, and it's crazy. I guess it's the mystique, of not
mhm.
knowing what's in there that draws people in. But I don't know.
You know, in Anne Rice's novels, what inspired me to get into the vampire scene was the Vampire Connection, and it was a series of bars that were around the world that had the front was a cheesy Jekyll and Hyde's. Remember Jekyll and Hyde's from New York?
Yes, I loved it.
Okay, it would be like that in the front, and then there'd be a library in the back and a secret door that would go into a room where vampires could hang out openly.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Okay, and in New York, there was the Lord Ruthven and the Lamia. There was the Dracula's Daughter in San Francisco, and I forgot the name of the shop of the place in New Orleans. But the cool part was it was like the real vampires were hiding behind the vampire glamour, the
Right.
vampire
I
myth.
like that. That's very
Yeah,
cool.
it
Yeah,
was it was so cool,
that is cool.
and that's what inspired me to start the my vampire network.
Oh, interesting. I
Yeah.
never knew that.
Oh well,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
I'm
learn
there's
something new every
probably
day.
we're going to discover a lot of stuff over the next couple years.
Right.
Um, so you have a couple businesses, the Vampire Boutique, which is the most visible one. Okay,
Well,
and
now the cafe is the most visible one. The our New Orleans Vampire Cafe is right in front. It's a beautiful location. It's connected to the boutique, but
yes,
it's right in front. Yeah, and so that
I
is
was
my
going to
most
lead into that.
visible. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's where you, me, and Michael Machette had lunch one day.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about the New Orleans Vampire Cafe.
So because it's attached to my shop, I really wanted to have a place for people to go after they experience the shop. Our shop
Mhm.
is tiny, 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 tiny,
Yeah.
like 1,200 square feet, maybe. Like that includes everything, the back rooms and everything. And so, and it's filled with product. And so we can fit like 10 people in the shop max. And people
Mhm.
want to linger. And we found that people come back. Well, I mean, I created this, I wanted it to happen, where we are like their magical concierge. So when people walk through the door, we, welcome them, and we send them other places. There's a lot of really cool places in New Orleans that are secret and fun. So we send them to these places and they come back and thank us. But we find that customers come back every single day that they're in town. And so we like we have a courtyard, and then there was a restaurant in front of us. And during the pandemic, that restaurant became available, and I just had to have it. And so I made it happen, and we actually opened in 1 month. I tore the place apart. I hired a chef who tore the kitchen apart. He did a tasting for us about 2 weeks into it, and then I hired the front of house staff. He hired the back of house staff, and that was it. We opened, and we were extremely successful from the very beginning because people want a magical environment. And
Mhm.
you can go on the vampire tours, but then there's nothing to do afterwards. And so that also, we'll talk about my speakeasy, but that's why I created that as well. But it's really nice because people can come with their children to the cafe. And I love that because one day I drove up and I saw a family of vampires out front drinking blood bags. So we have a specialty drink that's served out of blood bags. We have Fangria, which we import from Spain, which is Michael's Vampire Vineyards. And we
Mhm.
also have one that's our vampire vodka, which it's a pomegranate lemonade. But we also have a virgin one. So there were two little children out front and two grown-ups drinking blood bags, and it just looks so cool and eerie and creepy. But I mean, my whole thing is making it fun for tourists and
Mhm.
people, especially people that aren't gothic. Like, I love when I was working at the vampire shop late at night. Like Steve and I, when we worked there, we kept it open until midnight, many nights, and we were busy. And it's because like just people from every walk of day would walk in and they'd stumble upon this little tiny vampire shop, and then we would send them to other cool places, and and they would not expect to see the beautiful things that we have at the shop, like leather journals and things that vampires would use. And so it's very kind of as realistic as you can make a vampire shop. So it was, yeah, it's a really fun experience.
Well, one of the things that everybody talks about when they're like, "Dude, have you been to the Boutique de Vampire or the New Orleans Vampire Cafe?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I know the lady that runs the place." Um, and one thing that they always ask is are there real vampires running it? And I'm like, that's for us to know and you to find out.
Of course there are. Come on. We just want, well, our whole story is that, the boutique opened up to the public finally in 2003.
Mhm.
But we've been running the shop, since 1800s. And we're about to open the first vampire apothecary to the public ever. So we've been running it as well forever behind the
Okay.
scenes for vampires. But now it's going to be a really crazy place. So my announcement is, yes, so we're opening up Boutique de Vampires Apothecary. It's going to be, because humans have to eat, it's going to include food and drinks, but also cool, like we have Fangsmith, we have tarot readings, we are selling carnivorous plants, and all of our garden in the courtyard, every time you eat something or drink something, it's going to have herbs or flowers from our own garden. And
Oh, wow.
it's going to be a very magical place. Yeah.
That's cool. Now, are you gonna have coffee?
Coffee? Yes. Yes, we have
Okay,
coffee.
'cause
Vampire.
vampires absolutely must have coffee.
Yes, we have vampire coffee. We make coffee. We have,
Great.
Michael makes coffee. Yeah. We have espresso and regular coffee, Brazilian. Yeah.
What does Michael not make?
I know. I know. Everything edible. Like, well, we have our own mustard, a Noctra, the Creole mustard with a bite. And we also carry vampire hot sauce made in Transylvania, Louisiana. And so it's
Is it
actually,
Transylvania, Louisiana?
yep, tiny little town. There's nothing there but a water tower with a bat on it. And there used to be a school there, and that's it. Nothing, a gas station. That that's it.
Wow.
So it'd be a cool place for an amusement park, wouldn't it? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that would be great.
yeah, have concerts
Um,
out there.
like, one thing, about the apothecary is where's that gonna be?
2 blocks from us, on St. Peter, where Reverend Zombie's Voodoo Shop used to be. It's right
Okay.
across from Pat O'Brien's and Preservation Hall.
All right. So you're the first person to hear this outside of the world. We have created 3 drinks in honor of Anne Rice, officially gonna be by AMC, okay? And they are Lestat's Blonde, okay, which is champagne, a splash of lemon, and a splash of Chambord served with in a flute, okay?
Nice.
Then there's gonna be Louis' Bloodbath, which is red wine, cranberry juice, and Chambord, served chilled, shaken with no ice in a wine glass, okay? And then finally, the Claudia, which is the non-alcoholic, which is Sprite, cherry, and grenadine. It's a Shirley Temple, but don't tell anybody.
That's
Okay.
lovely. How nice.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
we're gonna be serving these at the Vampire Ball for this Halloween, which the theme will be Storyville. And
That's
you are an expert on such things, are you not?
I am, and the only reason I am is because my vampire novel about the Carter brothers. I wanted Wayne Carter to have a lover who was a madam, and I was
Mhm.
researching madams, and then fell in love with Josie Arlington. And so the more research I did about her, I really thought there should be a book just about her. So I contacted my publisher, and luckily they agreed. So my book, Josie Arlington's Storyville, came out 2 years ago, right when the pandemic hit. Yep,
Is this
because we were
it?
supposed to. Yep, that's it. Yes, that is my book.
I
Yes.
was I was on my second honeymoon this weekend with my wife,
Oh,
and
nice.
I was reading sections of this book to her, and she's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Our theme is Storyville." And um, you helped me compose a black veil for Storyville, and I'd like to read it to everybody real quick.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Okay. And this Marita was one of the contributors to this project, and she's the expert on Storyville because Josie Arlington, she actually wrote a book. This is a really great book. You can get it on Amazon or at the Boutique de Vampire. I read about 30% of it and skimmed through the rest of it. I'm going to finish it this week. I highly recommend it, and it really gives a great thing because what's really important for people to be aware of is that Storyville is going to be in the forefront of the vampire mythology starting this October because it's the backdrop for Interview with the Vampire.
Very cool. That's going to be so fun. What a beautiful, yeah.
So here we go. Storyville, 1897 to 1917, was a historical neighborhood in New Orleans, which ran as the country's only red light district where the world's oldest profession was illegal but tolerated and regulated. This district bordered and contained within Rue Robertson, North Robertson, Iberville Basin, and St. Louis streets. Originally called the district, it became known as Storyville after the city councilman Sidney Story wrote the legislation to control the neighborhood. This coincided with the USA's Gilded Age, 1870s through 1900, Britain's Victorian era until 1901, and France's La Belle Epoque, my favorite time, from 1871 to 1914, and ran for 20 years from July 5th, 1897, and ending in 1917. What attaches Storyville and puts it right at the center of the modern vampire mythos is that the setting is it's the setting for the first season of AMC's reimagining of Anne Rice's novel TV series, Interview with the Vampire, where the entrepreneur Louis Pontelac, the vampire Louis, owned and operated several establishments. But to get the rest of the story, go to endlessnight.com and you will experience the fullness of Storyville's experience. But one of the things that I really want to touch on is Marita's expertise on this genre.
Oh,
So
thank you. Well, I mean, I learned so much when I was writing my novel and doing the research for that book. It was an amazing time. And Josie Arlington, and not just Josie, but also Lulu White, these women, that was their only opportunity to own a business. I mean, there was no opportunity for women. And what they did was amazing. And they made it, Josie had the worst brothel in town. It was constantly fights and just awful. But then her lover killed her brother, and it changed everything for her. So she built the most beautiful brothel that became a place just to even, men would go there to conversate rather than just, the other. But it was a crazy era. And what she was able to accomplish, she was also a philanthropist in the end, and, really helped a lot of people. So I really hope that people, in fact, I just had a meeting with some Francis Ford Coppola. He has a new wine, and he's naming it after women. So I just sent him my book, and I'm really hoping that he names a bottle after her. But I just want to say one more thing about Josie. So the book led me to a crazy project, which is I almost cry every time I talk about it. But Josie had a niece named Anna, and she took her under her wing and really wanted her to thrive. And so she didn't want Anna to know that she was a madam. So she hid that from her forever. And Josie had a lover named Brady and pretended like they were married so that Anna wouldn't think that she was not, in wedlock or whatever. And so they would travel together. And when the city found out that Anna was Josie's, niece, they wouldn't let her go back to school. So Josie sent her to France to go to school. And then when she came back, she decided she's not going to run the brothel anymore. And, she really just spent her time with Anna. Well, when she passed away, she had built a tomb for herself in 1911, and she passed away on Valentine's Day in 1914. And right when she passed, and the tomb is spectacular. And the amount of time and effort that Josie put into the tomb that she wanted to spend her eternity with is phenomenal. So I found all the original documents at Tulane University,
Mhm.
and it was just a remarkable experience. And so a year and a day after Josie was in that tomb, when it was legal to remove a body, Anna had married Josie's lover a week after Josie died. So something was obviously going on there while Josie was still alive. But then a year and a day after she died, they sold the tomb for money and moved her into an unmarked tomb. And it just makes me sick to my stomach. And so when I had all these documents laid out on my bed one day and it was storming outside, I just started bawling. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to put her back in her tomb. So that's I'm going to one way or another, either if we have to do another tomb or something else. But I have found both families now. Finally, it took forever, and now just the cemetery is stopping us. So we are still very hopeful that we can put her into her own tomb. Excuse me. I mean, isn't that devastating though? Can you imagine? You that's where you want to spend your afterlife, and then the
Yeah.
person that you love the most in your life is the one who took the out from underneath you. It's unbelievable.
Well, one thing that I think is interesting is that she was buried there, but have you found her grave?
Oh yeah, we know I know exactly where she is and everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this is 110 years later.
Hmm.
Like, is there anything left of her?
I don't know. So even if there isn't, I mean, I don't know. We know where she is, and we can do the whole procession. But if there's nothing left, it doesn't matter because we're going to put a plaque on the tomb that says, like, Mary Dubler. Her real name is Mary Dubler, but then we'll
Mhm.
put Josie Arlington and the spirit of Josie Arlington, because that's the most important thing. She wanted her spirit to be there, and so I think that's more important than even moving her remains. There is the plaque that allows people to know that that's where she is, her spirit, and where she wanted to be, because that's what she wanted people to know, right? So if there's like a little bit of sand left of her, who cares? It's the soul and the spirit that's there,
The memory of her will rest there.
right? And there's
That's
really cool if you read my book, there's really cool ghost stories about it too, and really cool, neat stuff that happened that was actually very real and very popular to the city.
up to page 67.
Oh, okay.
So
So
I think
okay, yeah.
I
Oh,
have
you're gonna be.
I flipped through it. I read a little bit of the blue book section.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do a blue book instead of a playbill
Oh, fun.
for New Orleans. And then I think Tom Anderson was very intriguing. I just finished a section on Tom Anderson.
You're gonna love
Um,
my novel. You're gonna love my novel. So Wayne Carter, Wayne and John, they're resurrected and they're brought back here. And I'm not gonna tell you how right now. But Wayne wants to run. He doesn't want to run a brothel. He loves what Josie has created, but he thinks that she is making a mistake by not having cribs. And cribs were little tiny rooms with just a bed. I mean, barely you fit a bed and maybe a little bit of leg room to get into the bed. And there were many of them. And girls, it was like 5 cents a pop. And so he thinks that she's missing out on that. So he approaches her about not having her, a lady of her stature at this point, doing that, but he wants to do it for her. And so that's how they get involved, and they have this amazing love affair. You're gonna love it. It's really pretty cool.
when were can you explain who the Carter brothers were?
So John and Wayne Carter were serial killers that swore they were vampires. They were caught when they used to tie people up, and they'd have like 7 going at a time, and they would drink their blood out of, they slit their wrists, and they would drink blood out of chalices where the blood would go into. And one time they tied up a little girl, and they didn't tie her up tight enough, and she got away. They had her and her mother, and she ran into the police and told them what happened. Of course, they didn't believe that, you know, her whole story, but they ran there, and sure enough, they found all these people tied up. So they captured the Carter brothers, and they were hung. And of course, hanging a vampire is like, you know, hitting him in the face. So they say they're still found now and then around the city. You can still see the Carter brothers, and they lived across the street from where my cafe is, which is very serendipity. I mean, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Now, when did the Carter brothers take place?
In the early 1900s.
Okay, so during Storyville?
Yeah. I'm sorry?
During Storyville time?
Yeah, during Storyville time. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that can you explain to us what a blue book is?
So Blue Book was a catalog of how to find the woman of your choice. It was like the blue books they have for cars in California. So it would have, you know, the brothel, and then they would feature a woman sometimes. I actually have one. They're very, 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 very rare. This is the Blue Book, and inside, let me see. Let me just find a good example.
Where could you get blue books?
You can't. I mean, they're you just really can't. It's very, you know, they don't make them. So they would have a woman on this side, and then they would have like what do they have here? All the different women from that brothel. But then they would also have information. I'm trying to see here. They would have advertisements of the brothel. And they would have other advertisements for like liquor and stuff. And they even had one for a cemetery, which I thought was really weird. But mostly they would have, you know, like, yeah, a little information about a particular woman, and then all the other girls in the house. And then they would have, if they were white or black or combination thereof. And then that was also a very good thing. I mean, this sounds crazy, but it was a very good thing for Black women, because they were mixed. There were many mixed brothels, and it was a way to get out of, you know, the horrible environment that some women were in at the time. Even though they were prostitutes, they were actually living a better life.
You know, one thing that I find very interesting in my research is that when prostitution was legal, women had more control of their fates and their destinies in the past. And in France, prostitution was legal until 1948. And a madam by accident messed up and made it illegal, and in a competition with another brothel to put another brothel out of business. But when you keep it women managed and women owned, it seems to be much. I mean, in the most ideal situations, to be, I'm trying to be, you know, polite here. It's actually where women have control of themselves, just like Roxanne. You know, the song Roxanne talks about that, and and it's also a warning to men to never fall in love with a lady of the night, because they'll have their hearts broken because they're such free beings.
If you keep reading my book, one thing I think you'll really like is Josie's sense of humor. Some really amazing things happen to her where women in town were trying to, you know, make prostitutes look really bad, which, you know, I mean, of course they would, but she had really great ways to come back at them. And I think you'll find that fun. It's really fun.
Can I ask you a question about one?
Sure.
No. Is it true that some decadent ladies from like the high society went to go to one of her balls and masquerade, and she had the police raid the event? And yeah, okay, you guys got to read that. It was pretty wild.
It's so, isn't that awesome? I just fell in love with her. She was very clever, and she had a good sense of humor, and she was a nice lady too. She was nice to her musicians, and that, you know, that is the whole way that jazz and really became popular, because people would go to these brothels, and what's his name, Jelly Roll Morton. You know, that's how he got his whole start. And first he said he would never play the brothel because he walked through that like the hood, and he goes, no, I can't perform here. But then he saw how much money he was making, and he's like, oh my God, this is amazing. So it was I don't know, it was a neat time, crazy time, but a neat time.
In my research, it said in the one of the lines of the Black Veil, to provide entertainment for patrons, many of the establishment's musicians were hired to provide a new style of experimental music, which was and they were asked to jazz it up.
Oh, interesting. I don't know if that, I mean, really, it didn't. Yeah, yeah, okay, that's good. I like that, but I mean, that's not where like jazz came from. It was the true story is I'm trying to think. It was I think it was Jelly Roll who actually coined the name jazz. But
Really?
that's possible. Yeah, that's
Well, I know jazz had some roots in Storyville.
yeah, for sure,
And,
for sure.
and
Louis
there's so
Armstrong played in Storyville. Yeah,
what's that?
Louis Armstrong, like all those guys that got their start, in a lot of the brothels.
Yeah, and now today, is there anything left of Storyville? Any buildings?
There's one little tiny piece that's part of Lulu White's brothel, which is only one, like a door away from Josie's, and it's a convenience store, and it's just like one little corner. That's it. That's the only building that's standing that's left.
Okay, why did they close Storyville?
Because, well, the sailors, it was it was because of the sailors really that it became a big problem, and
Okay.
yeah, that's so they finally lost their licenses and stuff. But they created Storyville because they had other parts of prostitution in the French Quarter. There was the swamp, and there was before that there was Gallant Street, which was where the French Market is now, and so it was a really dangerous area, and they wanted to make the French Quarter more safe and attractive again. So they started taxing all those areas, taxing brothels. And so they said they wouldn't tax them out of Rampart Street. And so that's where Storyville was created, to Sidney Story's chagrin, because he hated it all. And then they named that district after him, which is hilarious. But anyway, so first there was Gallant Street, then there was the swamp. And the swamp was so dangerous that if you went in there, no one would come after you. And there were like 800 murders in no time at all. But if it was like the train would go by and they would throw wood off and they would build cribs for the girls. And I would love to be a fly on the wall. I wouldn't actually want to be there. But can you imagine being in this place that was like, it was all just dangerous, like gambling and, terrible. So anyway, Storyville, though, was then legalized prostitution, and yeah, little by little, it was because of sailors that they ended up stopping it.
Yeah, I heard the federal government shut it down because they were scared of syphilis.
Yeah, no, it had to, I mean, maybe because the sailors were getting syphilis. Yeah, that makes sense. But it had to do with too many sailors going there and and they were working for the government, so that was a big problem.
Now, one thing that I'm really curious to see is how they handle Storyville, because in my interview with the producers of Interview with the Vampire for Vampire Magazine, which is really kicking butt right now, we're doing a special issue on Anne Rice for this fall. One of the things that was really special about Storyville is the atmosphere, the glamour, the glitz, and everything like that. And what I'm excited to see is it come to life. Like, were there any other movies or cinema that people can experience Storyville through?
Oh, there's many. So when I was doing research for my novel, I looked at the movie Pretty Baby, where Brooke Shields was in, and it has a lot to do with Belloc. So Belloc was a photographer who, photographed these prostitutes, and he was a very unusual character. He has a big part in my book, in my novel. But anyway, in the movie Pretty Baby, it was very realistic. It's a pretty depressing movie, and it's pretty realistic, except that it's not true. Like, so there is a Belloc, how they portrayed him. He never got married, but he ends up marrying Brooke Shields at like 13 years old, and anyway, it's otherwise very well done. as far as what it really was like to be in a brothel. Like they would sell virgins, like a woman would get pregnant and have a baby, and then they would wait till that child was of age, and then they would sell her virginity. And that's what happened in Pretty Baby. And it's pretty disgusting and very depressing. The movie, it really leaves you feeling very, I don't know, eerie and hollow. Yeah, but that's really what, that was like. So there was that side of Storyville. Then also, it's interesting to watch because they don't see anything wrong with it within that community, right? It's just how it is. And that, I don't know, it's very disturbing. But also in the show True Blood, they had Pam had a brothel, and so that was kind of fun in Storyville. So
Oh, really?
yeah, she sure did. And there's so many movies about Storyville. There even might be one called Storyville that yeah, I think there is one called Storyville. But I mean, there's many books and things. But in cinema, yeah, Pretty Baby would be my go-to if anybody really wants to see what it was like. I think they did an excellent job of portraying, how glamorous they felt, but how sad it really is from the outside. Because there's really nothing glamorous about being a prostitute, even though it was a way for women to move up in the world. It's I don't want to promote prostitution. I don't think no woman should have to sell her body to do anything. We try to make it fun, and we look at what it did for women, but it should not be a way of life, that we promote for young girls. I mean, there's so
No.
many other things you can do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But Marita, you are an example of an entrepreneur who's a lady. Okay. You set a good example of what it's like to be a woman today. Back then they had to resort to certain things. Today you own like 5-6 businesses. Okay. And you're doing international work, and you're a peer to and a role model for young women to look up to and go, wow, I can do that too in my own genre. I can be a toy maker, or open a bar, or do whatever. And you should be proud of that.
Yeah, I am. And that's why I feel a little weird. It's a funny story. My mom, when I was president of marketing for a huge conglomeration of companies when I moved to New Orleans. And when I was moving here, I said, well, I'm going to open up a little vampire shop, and I'm starting a music business. And then I was going to open up a blues club with this man that I met. And so I'd never been a bartender. And I said, well, I can't manage bartenders unless I've been a bartender. So I want to work there at your bar before we open our blues club. And sure enough, he said, fine. And so I told my mom, and she looked at me one day. I was at her house in California. I'll never forget this. She looked at me like real serious, like, and said, Marita, what's next? Prostitution? And I'm like, Mom, you're comparing bartenders to prostitution. So anyway, I didn't do that, but I'm writing about it, which I thought was really funny, because I wasn't planning on writing about it. But yeah, anyway, it happens. And there's a reason for prostitution. And I mean, there's, especially in the past, like I said, that was the only outlet for a woman to be like a free woman, really. It's almost like a slavery. Women were kind of slaves. They were slaves to men, and so that was a way to break out of it.
But I'm just really glad we're living in today's era where we have opportunities, because I don't know if you know, but 4 of my mentors are women. And that's Chichi Valenti from Mother, aka she taught me how to run my events. She's my mentor, and she's still my mentor. I introduced her to my wife last year. We had lunch with her and her husband. And back in the 90s, when I was a little wee vampire, she taught me how to run clubs. Then there's Trish LaBelle, who owns Bar Sinister here in LA and owns a bunch of restaurants, and she is a dragon. Okay. And then there's Deddy, who owns the Slime Light in London, which is a big goth club, okay, and paintball venue, and it's really cool. And of course, there's Dominique, who we call her the German Hammer. She was a German woman from Berlin, and she opened her own nightclub, Insomnia, and she actually introduced me to Till from Rammstein. And all of these women own their own venues, run their own businesses, and treated me like a son and mentored me on how to run events. So I have a lot of I look up to these women, and I still am in touch with all four of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
it's really,
what's really interesting to me, and like I was wrong. I've realized that I was wrong in my original opinion, but when I was growing up, I never saw a difference between men and women, and I never felt like I was stifled in my, rising up the ladder in the corporate world and marketing because I was a woman. I just never felt that. So I thought people like all this, woman rights stuff, like I thought that was so ridiculous. But as I've been doing research on history, I realized what women went through. We're so lucky that they did the things they did for us, And so I have to take all that back. But I'm not a big I don't know how to say this. I don't see a difference, just like I don't see a difference between black and white or any race. I don't see a difference between men and women. I really don't. I mean, only through history have I learned that absolutely there was. And I'm glad it's not like that. I'm glad these women paved the way for us. But I mean, people are on a level playing field for me anyway. When like I'm not going to be, I don't know. I just don't see it. I just see people for who they are, as a person, and I'm glad I do actually.
I'm a big history buff, and when I walk down the streets of a city, I was in Paris for 8 years, and I saw I asked my French teacher once, and I was like, "Isn't French like the most sexist language ever?" And she's like, "Yeah, but it's old." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And she's like, "It's an ancient language. It's an antique." Okay, we're today 70% of college graduates in France are women, and it's like I'm just really happy that we're living in this era where women don't have to do things, and we can be peers, and I can go down to your cafe and I can be like, "This is Marita. She owns the Vampire Cafe."
Right.
And it's really cool. And and I really love all the creativity and your business sense. And as an individual, you're doing great.
Yes,
And
I'm really having fun, And like I said, I like to make things fun for people. And that's where I get my energy. And when my customers, we have people that come to the cafe when they're in town, just like the shop, and they're there every day. Now, a lot of that has to do with the chef. We have the most amazing chef, and I get people there with the marketing and the fun part. He keeps them coming back because our food is that good. But people love lingering in there and being there, and that makes me so happy, So I'm thrilled that what I'm doing is making people happy.
And that's what we do. I make fangs and throw parties for people to wear them and make vampires smile. And you provide the atmosphere and the experience when people come to New Orleans. Because one of the things that really disappointed me when I came to New Orleans in 1995 was there wasn't any permanent vampire themed restaurants or bars. And you made it happen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it gives a place for people to wear their fangs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, where can people find you? What's like the best way to find out about your businesses?
Well, in the very near future, hopefully by the end of September, we are going to have one website. It'll be nolavampires.com.
Great.
And so all of our businesses will be under that one website, and that'll be the easiest way to find us. Right now we have feelthebite.com, which is for the boutique, nolavampirecafe.com, and then we will have vampireapothecary.com as well. But all you have to know is nolavampires.com.
And Nola Vampires with an I?
With an I. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Marita, thank you. It has been a pleasure. And I'm going to be in New Orleans on the 9th through 12th of September.
Okay, I'll be back. Good. I'm about to go on vacation.
And I'd love to have a coffee with you.
Let's do it for sure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Be well, Marita.
Be well.
Thank you for watching. The best way to support us on this vampire adventure is through the crowdsource funding website, Patreon. Please support our sponsors, Endless Night Vampire Ball, Sabretooth 3D Fangs, and Vampire Magazine. Thank you. Rock and roll.